am super excited to share with you my reading update because I have been reading a lot of books this week. Hey there, it's Mitzi. Welcome to my channel. Today I am sharing another weekly reading update, and I have been reading a lot of books this week and it has been fantastic. I've got some great ones to share. I have been participated in several readathons, the Fall Into Reading Challenge, the Moore Montgomery that I am also co-hosting, the 30 books in 30 days, as well as Series September. So I have been reading for all of those different readathons, and it's made my reading just various books. I'm picking up all different types of books and just having a great time. So I'm going to first talk about the 30 books in 30 days. I've been trying to read a picture book for that because I thought that would make it easier. And so these are some of the picture books I read this week. The first picture book I read was because I found this in the library. I had went to look for some other picture books and I found this one too, and I thought, well, that's perfect because it works for the Moore Montgomery Challenge as well. And this is a kids can read, so it's super easy. It's just a basic little easy reader type book, but it's a biography about Lucy Maud Montgomery, and so I thought that was perfect. So when I saw that, I picked it up too. I really liked this for an easy reader. If you have a child who is just learning to read on their own, this would be a great one for a biography because it has great illustrations in it, and it also tells the story of Lucy Maud Montgomery and how she came to write beginning with the Anne of Green Gables series and then to continue with so many other great books. So I used this for the 30 books in 30 days as well as the Moore Montgomery Challenge. And then I just picked up some other books. My son and my husband stopped in the library with me, so they picked up a couple and then I picked up a few. My husband found this one. It's called The Night I Followed the Dog by Nina Layden. He just thought that looked like a funny cover, and this really was a funny little book. It's about this man who, this young boy, who isn't that proud of his dog because his neighbor's dog wins all the awards and his just eats and sleeps pretty much. He doesn't do any tricks. But then one day he notices that his dog is dressed in a tuxedo and he's getting into this limousine, and he's like, did I just dream that? So the next night he follows the dog on his bicycle, and when after he follows the dog, when he gets to where the dog has gone in the limousine, there is the dog house, and look at that great picture. But there's the dog house, and it's like a speakeasy, and his dog owns this speakeasy, and it's a place for dogs to relax. They can sit on the couch, they can drink from their bowls and eat their little dog biscuits. It's just really cute, and so I enjoyed this. This was just a fun one, and I really think that kids who love animals would really appreciate this one. It's a really cute one. Then the next one was totally random again. I found this on a display in the picture book section at my library, but it called to me because it's called The Fantastic Flying Books of Mr. Morris Lesmore by William Joyce. And I just loved that cover. I thought, yes, I need to pick this one up because it's about books. This was a fantasy and it was fantastic. It's about this man who loves reading, of course. He loves writing his own words and he loves books. And one day the books start blowing away, and it ends up that there is this library. It's purely magical, and the way that it ends, I don't want to say too much about it, but I was tearing up at the end of this book. It was just, if you love books and reading, and if you love writing too, you would love this. But it was just such a beautiful story for book lovers. So if you enjoy books, and you enjoy, of course you do if you're watching this channel, but if you enjoy picture books, I highly recommend picking this one up. It is a beautiful story. And then my son found this book, and I was excited that he found this. This is actually a Caldecott Honor book, which is a award for the illustrations. This one's called Me, Jane by Patrick McDonald. And I just thought it was really cute. So I said, yeah, I'll check that one out too. And the pictures in this, again, are just precious. I love the pictures. I thought that they were so sweet. And it tells about Jane and her little stuffed monkey that she carries around with her. But as you read, you start figuring out that it's actually about Jane Goodall. I think that's how you say her name, who was a scientist. This is a little picture book that's super simple that introduces her. And at the back, there is a section on her about Jane Goodall. And it shows a little picture, and then there's also a message from Jane Goodall at the back. So this was a sweet surprise because I was familiar with Jane Goodall, so I really enjoyed this one too. And then I found another one for Anne of Green Gables that I didn't even know existed, and it's called Goodnight Anne, and it's written by Callie George and illustrated by Genevieve Godbout. I guess that's how you say their names. This is kind of like a Goodnight Moon version of Anne of Green Gables. It's super simple, but it's really pretty. And what's so wonderful about it is as you go through, you definitely recognize all the little sayings in the book if you are an Anne of Green Gables lover like me. If you love that book, all the highlights of the book that just make it so precious, all those little moments are in this sweet little Goodnight Moon kind of story. It's really sweet. I enjoyed this, and this will fulfill not only my 30 books for 30 days, but also will fulfill a prompt on the More Montgomery challenge. So I was excited to get that one too. So those are the picture books that I've been reading this week. I think that's all of them. If not, I'll share the others in another video. Then Shake-Timber is taking place over the next few weeks during September. And this week, Rainy from Rainy Day Reads was going to host the reading of A Midsummer Night's Dream. And I had that one already in this No Fear Shakespeare version, so I thought I would give it a try. It was not hard to read at all. Now, I know these No Fear Shakespeares make it super easy. And if you are intimidated by Shakespeare like I am, pick these up because it does make it easier. What I like about these is at the beginning, it gives you a list of all the characters and what's going on with them. So before you even start, you know kind of what each character represents in the story, in the play. And that helps me a lot. So once I do that, I can pretty much read the Shakespeare version without even looking at the other side. I mean, it makes it that much easier. But if there were phrases, I would just look over to the other side. That was the modern English version and figure it out. So this one is just a comedy about some misunderstanding. It's kind of like Cupid and, you know, they're asleep in the forest and they have sort of love dust sprinkled into their eyes so that when they wake, whoever they see first is who they fall in love with. It's that kind of thing. And then, of course, things don't go as planned, and there's just a whole mix-up, which makes it super funny. I did enjoy this, but I'm thinking that Hamlet has been my favorite so far, and it's a tragedy. I've read The Tempest and Midsummer Night's Dream, which are comedies, and I like those, but not as much as I enjoy the tragedies. And I was talking to my son about it, and he said, well, maybe it's because the humor's different, and you might just not get the humor as much today as you would have in Shakespeare's time. And I think that's it, because a tragedy's a tragedy. You know, I mean, that just really doesn't change, but humor kind of does over time. So maybe that's it, because I think some of the things that are supposed to be funny in here, I don't think is funny. So anyway, I did enjoy reading it, and I'm glad that I participated in Shake-Timber. This is the only one I'm going to read for Shake-Timber, but still, I'm excited that I actually got to one of them. So then I read Mr. Harrison's Confessions by Elizabeth Gaskell. Now, I read this for the series September because I'm counting this as a trilogy. It is claimed to be the prequel to Cranford, and then there is My Lady Ludlow, who is supposed to, I think that's supposed to be after Cranford. And the reason I'm reading them is because I read Cranford and I want to watch the movie adaptation. And I heard that the movie adaptation included scenes from Mr. Harrison's Confessions as well as My Lady Ludlow. So I wanted to read those before I watched the movie adaptation. Anyway, I read this one to fulfill that prompt as well as to prepare myself to watch the movie for Victober. This was cute. It was a lot like Cranford. I didn't enjoy it quite as much, but again, it's a novella. It's super short. There wasn't much to it. But it is, if you enjoy the small town, village sort of feeling of Cranford, you'll probably enjoy this too. It's just like a snippet from Cranford is basically how it feels. There's a lot of gossip that leads to a lot of misunderstandings, which makes it funny. And so I do recommend this one. It wasn't my favorite Elizabeth Gaskell, but it's Elizabeth Gaskell, so it's a great read for that. Then I read one that I was so surprised at. Okay, so years ago, I read the first novel, I can't even think of what the name of it is, A Study in Scarlet, is that what it's called? By Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, this first Sherlock Holmes novel. I hated it. I'll just be honest with you. I read that and thought, why is this so popular? Because I do not like this book. It was disjointed. In the middle of it, I thought we were chasing rabbits. I didn't understand where we were going. I didn't like Sherlock Holmes. I just did not like that book. So I have not read anything else by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle because I just did not like it. But my son, my 23-year-old, loves Sherlock Holmes. And he has lots of books. Actually, I was going to show you some, but there's too many. He has lots of collections of Sherlock Holmes because he enjoys it so much. So last week, or might have been a couple of weeks ago, he kept telling me, you need to read The Hound of the Baskervilles over the next few weeks because it's a great read for this time of year because he knows I like to read seasonally. I was like, okay, and I kind of ignored it. Well, he put it on my nightstand, The Hound of the Baskervilles, and said, read it. It's short. Go ahead and read it. So I said, okay. And I did. And I loved this. This is not like the other novel at all. This one, and you probably already know this story, but I had never read it. It had all those Gothic kind of feels that I love at this time of year. There is a curse of the Baskervilles where there is this haunted hound kind of thing that is killing, and it's set out, it's a old estate that's by itself and, spooky. So it has that great setup at the beginning. So at the beginning of the story, there, of course, is a murder, and they're not sure, what's happened. And there is this curse that is introduced. So the very beginning, you read this story within a story about a curse, and I loved that. So it set it up for me wonderfully. And then, of course, as you go, you find out what's really going on here at this estate. It's not very long, but it was the perfect read. I've heard people say, because I've heard people talk about this book before, and I remember someone reviewing this and saying that the ending fell flat for them. But I disagree. I thought this book was fantastic, and I loved the way it ended. And I of course, I can't tell you too much about that. But if you like mysteries and you want more of a Gothic feel to that mystery, this would be a great one to read during the next few months, September, October. It has that feel to it, and I really enjoyed it. Yes, I told my son, I said, there's a certain adaptation of this that I want to check out from the library, but the problem is each disc was separate. It wasn't the whole season, and I couldn't figure out which one had The Hound of the Baskervilles on it. So he told me, he said, you bought me that. I didn't even know it, but apparently I bought him this DVD set of the Sherlock Holmes with Jeremy Brett. He said that's the one that he enjoyed the most. So we sat down and watched The Hound of the Baskervilles, and it was great too. It was a great adaptation, and it was a fun way to celebrate actually enjoying a Sherlock Holmes. So what he wants to do now is, he said, I'll read with you we'll buddy read some of these short stories, and then we will watch the episode. So I thought that would be fun to do, especially during this time of year. That'll be a fun thing. And then I read another book for Series September because this is going to serve for the out of the box prompt on that. And this also serves for leaves on the cover. And that is The Winds of Autumn by Jeanette Oak. This is second in her Seasons of the Heart series. And I loved the first one, but I loved this one even more. I am so surprised at how much I'm enjoying these books that were written, I think like in the 1980s or something. But they don't feel like that because they're set like on, you know, on the prairie kind of thing. They're like Little House on the Prairie kind of feel to them. So because they're old-fashioned, they don't date as easily. Anyway, this one is about Josh, who we learn about in the first one, who lives with his aunt. I can't tell you too much because I might spoil some of the first one. But this one, he is older. I think he's like 15 or 16. And it's more about growing up. And there's a lot about questioning his faith because he's interested in this girl who actually is the teacher's daughter. There's a new teacher comes to town. And the teacher is teaching evolution. And so he likes the girl, but he's struggling with, okay, do I believe in God as my creator or Darwin's theory? And so it was interesting with that because he had to figure out, you know, his own faith and, you know, what would he trust in? Would he even be brave enough to research, you know, Darwin's theory, or would he just like to close that off and not even think about it? So I thought that was an interesting take during this time period. But I also like that she doesn't just make everything, you know, work out. There's a lot of heartache in this one. I cried in this one because there's some serious topics, lots of heartache, and, you know, everything is not just cut and dry on faith. So I really enjoyed that for that aspect, and I do look forward to picking up the next one in this series. And then finally, oh my goodness, I read this book. I know that Nikki from Red Dot Reads read this earlier this year because I've had this on my shelf. And after she talked about it, I put it on my cart to read for the fall because I knew it would be a great read for that. This is called The Silent Companions by Laura Purcell. This is a brilliant book. I loved this. It's funny because I had picked up this book and another one and put it on my nightstand, and I told my son, I said, I'm going to go to my room before bed. I'm going to read the first chapter of each one of these books and decide which one piques my interest and just continue, because I just wasn't sure what I wanted to read that night. I started this and never picked up the other one. I don't even know where that book is. I loved this. It was such a page turner. I could not put it down. I was annoyed when I had to stop and do something else. This is definitely Gothic. It is Gothic Victorian too. So if you want something that's not actually Victorian literature, but is set in that time period, this will be a great one because it is super creepy. It's called The Silent Companions because there's this girl, Elsie, who her husband has died and she is going to his estate, but she's never been to this estate out in the country it's pretty much falling apart. And while she's moving in with, I think it's his cousin Sarah, they find these silent companions, which are these wood cutouts that look realistic. They look very real. And actually one of them looks like Elsie the girl, so that's creepy in itself. And as the story progresses, you start wondering if all of this is in her mind or if these silent companions are haunted. You know, one minute she looks and she sees the silent companion here, and then the next minute, you know, she's in this other room and there's the silent companion. They're being moved. You're wondering, okay, is someone moving these things, or, you know, what's going on? So you have that in the 1800s. That's happening in the 1800s. Then you flip back to the 1600s where you find out about another woman who lived in this house and who actually bought these silent companions and brought them into the home, and why she had brought them to the house and all that. You find out all that in the past. So you're going back and forth, and then you're also going ahead just a little bit when Elsie is actually in a hospital because they think that she is insane. That has all the elements that I needed for this time of year. I love Gothic elements. I love a little creepy. Now, I will say that in this particular book, it was at my threshold for violent, gory details. It wasn't over that. You know, I kept reading. I think I would have still had to read because I was so involved in this book. But it was at my threshold by the end, as there's more and more murders and things happening. It got a little too gory detailed for me, but still I loved the book. It was a great read. But it does have a few little super scary parts in it. I think you could handle it. It's, you know, it's Gothic Victorian. If you like super creepy, then you probably would like this book. I loved it. I thought it was a great read. I'm so glad that Nikki mentioned this book, because that forced me to put it on my cart to read this year. And I have read one other by Laura Purcell. It was called Bone China. I think that's what it was. And I enjoyed that one, but this one is my favorite so far. It was fantastic. So I do hope to pick up more Laura Purcell. If you like Gothic Victorian settings, pick this one up, because these silent companions are super creepy. It was an interesting premise, and I really enjoyed that. So those are the things I have been reading over the past week. I have been just reading so much and enjoying it. My son, my 23-year-old, had a conference, so he was gone for a few days. My husband had worked over, and I just had a lot more time to just sit down and read, and I just enjoyed it. It was so much fun to get into these books, and I read some favorites. So what have you been reading this week? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.